Man, that's unfortunate, isn't it? Look at that. That's a good thing that the series kicked ass. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back today, another book review. This one, guys, I'm going to be talking about a series of books, and of course I'm talking about The War for the Rose Throne by Peter McLean. Yes, I've been assured it is Peter McLean, not Macklin, not McLean. All those things I've said over the past few years, it is apparently McLean, like John McClane from One Die Hard. So this is Priest of Bones, Priest of Lies, Prince of Gallows, and Priest of Crowns. I said Prince, didn't I? It's all Priest. And again, Bones, Lies, Gallows, and Crowns. And guys, I read these all over the course of a couple of months because they are just fun little books. So four-book series here. I first heard about this from my amigo Patrick over Patrick Reads. Of course, he recommends a ton to me. I recommend a ton to him. More times than not, though, he has read it before I get a chance to recommend it to him. But I did a video a while back of, with some series that I feel like I want to start after I finish Realm of the ℙ𝕦𝕣𝕠𝕠𝕜𝕤. That was my long-running series at the time. And there was a vote and came in third place, but there was a lot of support for this series, and people kept telling me, Mike, it's going to be a series I know that you're going to love. Well, hey guys, you were right. It is a series that I do love. I'm going to talk to you guys today about why I did really love this. We're going to begin like usual, guys. We're going to talk about what is it about. Well, the war is over, and Army Priest Thomas Piety heads home with Sergeant Bloody Ann at his side. But things have changed while he was away. His crime empire has been stolen, and the people of Ellinburg, his people, have run out of food and hope and places to hide. Thomas sets out to reclaim what was his with the help from Anne, his brother Jochen, and his new gang, the Pious Men. But when he finds himself dragged into a web of political intrigue once again, everything gets more complicated. As the Pious Men fight shadowy foreign infiltrators in the backstreet taverns, brothels, and gambling dens of Thomas's old life, it becomes clear the war is only just beginning. As he sets out to reclaim his home, Thomas soon finds himself fighting another war. This one just as bloody as the last, but fought in the shadows over the Rose Throne itself. Guys, this takes us back to a really good four-book series I'm going to talk about today. This is The War for the Rose Throne by Peter McLean. I still almost said it wrong, and that probably won't be the last time that does happen. But let's begin like usual, guys, talk about what makes this series good or bad. I like to start with the good, and there's quite a bit of it. Now, first of all, I just like that this is a character, I guess the structure, the narrative is kind of done the right way. When you're dealing with a character telling his memoir to the reader, I feel like this has kind of been really, really popularized the last decade. I feel like it's kind of been overdone just to a certain point. I feel like this does it just right. I feel like he is kind of recounting his life story without like breaking the fourth wall to tell you, hey, reader, in case you weren't paying attention to the last 400 pages that you read, I'm talking directly to you now. I feel like he does it. It's much like a Sun Eater, and he's kind of telling you, this is what happened, and here's how it kind of got here. So when you're dealing with the personal transformation kind of narrative, it can be tough to pull off. I feel like McLean really does nail it here because you just really get inside of Thomas Piety's head and just see what he's thinking at all times, and how, even though this is a guy who probably comes off as kind of scary, intimidating, very sure of himself, always has the right answer to other people, inside of his head you're seeing he's quite unsure and he doubts himself quite a bit. I think that's good. It keeps it from coming off as, the Mary Sue, Gary Stu kind of character, the character who never does anything wrong, always makes the right decision. No, Thomas makes a lot of bad decisions, and I feel like that it doesn't necessarily make him a weak character. It makes him a flawed character, and this series is full of flawed characters, and I got to talk about this supporting cast, because when you go with the Pious Men, I just love this group. And again, I want to kind of get this out here early, is that this isn't going to be a series for everybody because these are bad people, guys. This is a very grimdark series. These guys do some bad stuff. They do some really, really bad things, but I don't feel like they're ever to the point of nihilism. Like some of these series, it's like they want to make it so dark that everyone is just like a complete shitbag. I don't think so. Like they do really bad things, but even there's some lines that they don't cross. Like Thomas establishes that in the opening pages of the first chapter. Like I put up a lot of stuff, but there are some things I can't abide. And I appreciate that because it keeps your characters from getting to the point where just like, this is just like edgelord kind of stuff. Now, I feel like Thomas is a flawed character. Bloody Ann is a flawed character, but Bloody Ann is bloody brilliant. It's basically his number two, his right hand, so to speak. And I feel like all these characters have things that make it where you see like, okay, they're going through some stuff. And that makes me to this series has really a great approach to post-traumatic stress disorder, which basically he calls battle shock in this. And I feel like that's just something that I haven't seen it portrayed as well as it has here. I've seen it in several other stories, but this one just, look, I'm going to be honest with you here. I had a dad who fought in the Vietnam War. And he just didn't like to talk about it because he said it did bother him too much, and he would have random panic attacks sometimes. So it was kind of interesting to see that from this character's point of view. He's not the only one suffering. His brother's got it way worse than he does. But he's dealing with battle shock, and he's never really going to be over it, and you don't see that battle. And I feel like that's what a lot of people are kind of bounce off the series say, is like they feel like the series is starting after the stuff that they wanted to see. Not me. I like seeing the aftermath of the battle. So you hear about ℙ𝕦𝕣𝕠𝕠𝕜𝕤 the whole book, and how awful and how brutal and how bloody it was, and why it's made all these characters so damaged. You don't actually see it, but I like that. Again, I like seeing that's why these characters are so messed up. They have been through the war, and now they're trying to put their life back together, which has been completely uprooted while they've been gone. But I think about ℏ, and I think about Fat Luca, I think about Billy the Boy. Oh, that's a great one. Rosie, Mina, Elsa, they all have incredible arcs this series. So it isn't just Thomas. Yes, you're in Thomas's head from his point of view the whole series, but all these characters have growth throughout the series, and more than once you'll be stunned by the progressions that they make and some of the choices that, well, they cause some consequences, let's put it this way. So when a character is recounting their memoirs, obviously we know as the reader, okay, well, they're living here, they're alive here to tell me this story. So how do I create stakes? Well, it's simple. With political backstabbing, betrayal, intrigue, all of the above, so many things kind of twist and turn, and you start to care about that secondary group of characters. So making you give a damn about the pious men and about the people that Thomas does come into contact with, because the people that are important to Thomas will in turn become important to you as the reader, because you do get connected to that group of characters. And there are several characters, and I won't mention their name because I don't want you to know how it affected me personally, but there are several characters I got quite attached to, and let's just say that put me through the ringer just as much as Mr. McLean here likes to put his characters through the ringer quite a bit. But I do love the plotting and the scheming in here. It's some of the best that I've seen in fantasy. And I couldn't get enough of it, and I just wanted to see more. And I'm not talking about just like the ground level, because the books do have kind of a tonal shift in the second half, and you go from just like the ground level to dealing with the the hierarchy, the aristocrats, just the nobility, and dealing with all that stuff at court that you would in a traditional fantasy series, but not quite in the way that you're thinking. And we deal with cults and secret societies and all these things, and the true power behind the crown, all that stuff. It really gets deeper in books 3 and 4, but I feel like the series has enough different stuff that's going to have something for everyone. But for me, it's an amalgamation of everything. Just kind of blends so perfectly well that I love the world that he creates here. But one of my favorite things about this is a big theme in this series is about not wanting power, and then once you have it, are you willing to let go of it? That's something that's always that forbidden sin that maybe you shouldn't be messing with. Am I having too much chocolate? Chocolate's still chocolate. It's still going to get you in the end. That's kind of how I feel about it. It's like it's dangerous because you know that power is going to be the ultimate seductress, right? It's going to grab hold of you and it's never going to want to let go. And I think that's something that more characters than just Thomas deal with in this. And it's the way he writes, it's really good. The way that he writes the magic, it's called the cunning in here, and it's kind of magic-ish. I mean, it could be witchcraft, it could be necromancy, there could be all kinds of weird stuff going on. And what I love about it, guys, this is a me thing, it's a soft magic system, and I love that. It's a soft magic system. It's not really explained. So if you're wanting to know what makes the magic in this series work, might not be something that's a good for you. It's a good for me. I'm over the magic being a main character in the story. I think there's room for that in fantasy, but I think that's why these books are, under 400 pages and not 800 pages, because he doesn't feel the need to tell me how everything works in the story, and I'm okay with that. To me, it helps keep the world grounded. It keeps the fear of whatever the cunning is alive, not telling me how it works and how to battle it, how to counteract it, all these things. I love that he's able to do that. So again, for me, I'm always going to be a soft magic guy. I prefer that. I came up on Lord of the Rings. Gandalf can do magic because he's a wizard. That's a good enough explanation for me. But I gotta say, guys, this is just Grimdark at its finest. I mean, I've read several series over the past few years, and I feel like this is up there with them. I feel like this is very comparable to like a Mike Shackle's Last War. You'll get hints of Abercrombie in there. I feel like everybody always wants to go to that when they start dealing with Grimdark because he is Lord Grimdark. Obviously, I don't think it quite has like that kind of wicked humor like a Joe Abercrombie, but it's got that kind of feeling of being down in the muck and your character is just always being in danger, like Mike Shackle did in the Last War. So I think if you like those kind of things, you'll definitely be down with it because things do feel quite hopeless a lot. And the characters, again, they aren't good people. But again, I think it's a good balance because they aren't just scum of the earth. They will do things to get ahead, but even they have some limits. Now, what about the bad? I guess with me, I never like to say the bad, but I like to bring these things up just to let people know in case you're kind of on the edge about this. Major content warning, guys. There's nothing off the table. You're dealing with the atrocities of war. You're dealing with people always trying to get ahead, a lot of backstabbing, and nothing is off limits. So I'm not going to get into the particulars. Just know that if you are easily triggered by things like that, this one might be a pass for you because this has some stuff in this like, wow, what happened to you? Why would you write that? So I think, again, if you've read like the later, like the Red Rising sequels, or if you've read Abercrombie or Mike Shackle, maybe some Mark Lawrence, I think you'll be okay. But it's very much in that same vein. So warning there. I mean, this shit's dark. These characters do some bad stuff, and he doesn't hide away from that. Again, I don't know why I got to keep bringing it up, guys. If you're reading adult fantasy, expect some bad language. Yes, it has bad language. It's got the F word quite a bit. Personally, I'm a deviant. I love these things, but again, I like to warn people because I've had so many people, more than you think, reach out and be like, "Oh, well, I wanted to listen to this book, but I listen to it with my kids in the car. And I don't want bad language." I'm like, "Well, the content's pretty bad. I don't think your kids should be hearing that either, more than just the F word." Right, so if that's something that is what you want or not want, you've been warned. It does have a lot of bad language in it. It repeats phrases a lot, and this is just a nitpick. Again, this is how you know the series was good. A nitpick. He repeats phrases a lot. These characters, when they react to the battle shock, it's kind of like the same phrases over and over again. It's like, okay, I understand. It'd be neat if you could show this a different way. Breathe, just breathe. And I mean, I appreciate that he's showing me these characters are always suffering through this, but it can start to feel repetitive after a while. He uses the phrase "the world exploded" a lot. I feel like that one's starting to get to the point in all fantasy, almost to the point of they released the breath they didn't know they were holding. He actually doesn't use that in this, but he does use "the world exploded" several times. I think Mike Shackle did as well. I think I had that same gripe. So I think it's just something I'm starting to notice about modern fantasy, is that phrase, "the world exploded." Lots of slice of life that some may find boring. There is a lot of times in here where you're like, the plot really hasn't progressed. To me, that's called character development. It will get you into it. And when you got books this short, people are like, well, where do you find room for stuff like that? I think if you wanted to really streamline this series, you probably could have told it in a trilogy instead of 4 books. But because you do have those moments, and you do have those flashbacks of when some of these characters were younger, especially the story with Thomas and Joachim when they were younger, is just really good stuff. I mean, really damaging, scarring stuff, but really well written, let's put it that way. That stuff can drag for some people. For me, I found it just riveting. I love slice of life when it's done well, when I just want to hang out with these characters. I want to find out more about this world, about the daily in and outs of what a daily life is like in this world. I feel like that's good stuff. Tonal shift that I talked about in books 3 and 4. It's one of those things where book 1 is you're very much just your street gangster level, and book 2 you deal with the nobility a little bit, but it's like a fine balance between the two. And instead I felt like it worked. Book 3 goes all in on that part, so it's like you start to get worried where I feel like book 4 does 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It goes back to the street level towards the end, but the first half is very much still in the up there in the hierarchy. So it's one of those things where you got to be okay with our character bouncing around between Danzburg and Ellinburg, and I think that really what you're looking for is a balance between those two. I think you'll get it. But if you like one more than the other, you might struggle with that a little bit. And I will say, I have to say, my biggest complaint is probably I feel like the climax is rushed. And I know that there was some kind of pressure for him to finish this series. The publisher was giving him a hard time or something like that. So, I mean, and you'll notice that book 4 is a little bigger than all the other ones here. It's one on the top. It is a little bigger. And I almost feel like this series was planned to be 5 books. I said at one point, I wonder if it felt like it was supposed to be a trilogy. No, I feel like this one was supposed to be 5, and he wrapped it up in 4. That's what it feels like to me, because book 4 is really split in half. You have a very clear first act and a second act of that book. And I feel like the second act which is where you know that the main plot at the end of book 3, you know this is what we're going for in book 4. He doesn't get to it till the halfway point, and then it feels like it's really fast because then like the last 50 pages or so is wrapping everything up. And it's wrapped up beautifully, sort of. And that's the thing. I don't know if that would really consider bad. There's any ending in any series, guys, is going to be divisive. I feel like there is no ending where everyone is happy. I thought the ending was awesome. It was so well done. It was, again, when you expect super, super happy endings for a Grimdark series, again, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but I thought it was really, really well done. And it really, really dives deep into those themes I was talking about earlier. And I thought it was really just like, hey, Thanos, like, what did it cost? Everything. It's kind of how it felt to me. So I thought the ending was wonderful. But I can see how it might leave some people throwing the book across the room. So you've been warned there. But again, I don't think I'd count that as a bad. But yeah, the ending of a series is divisive. I mean, tell me something I haven't said before. How about why you guys should read it? I think if you're a fan of Joe Abercrombie, Mike Shackle, like I said, Pierce Brown, like in the Red Rising sequels, more so than the original trilogy. And even though it didn't really click for me, I still think there's a lot of Mark Lawrence style in here. I think you're going to like it quite a bit. It's going to be just kind of what you're looking for. Like I said, it doesn't have the humor of Joe, but it does have the dialogue. Will feel a little familiar in that regard because the dialogue is really good, especially between Anne and Rosie and Thomas. When those three are together, I feel like it really is good stuff. I like that they're short. They're quick reads, man. Like I said, I read all 4 of these. I think that you can read all 4 of these faster than you'll be able to read the new Stormlight book that comes out this fall for sure. You'll blow through them really quick. I don't feel like they drag. Like I said, that slice of life stuff does bother you a little bit. It might. So your mileage is going to vary on that one. But for me, I felt like it never really dragged. It has that hopelessness of like the Pierce Brown sequels. And I think if you like that kind of style, after what happens after the battle, I think that's going to be something that you're really into. So again, I go back to Last War. If you aren't catching this, read Last War. It's really good. I think that you'll be quite happy here. So fans of Mike Shackle's Last War are really going to dig this series, I think. And I like that it's told in a narrative style that keeps you flipping the pages because you want to know what got Thomas to this point. What did he do next? How did he get out of this situation? For me, it's like knowing that, our main character is going to survive through all this. How did you survive? What did you do? How did you get to this point? Sure. I think that's an interesting storytelling technique. It's pretty satisfying beginning, middle, and end, regardless of how you feel about the ending. It's very clear he had a planned arc for this main character, where he was going to start, where he was going to proceed to, and where he was finally going to end up. And it felt like it was a very clear. Even if it did feel a little rushed, it did feel like it wasn't anything that was like so forced that like I couldn't see him getting there in that amount of time. So again, I felt like he knew on page 1, he knew where he was going to end with the last page with Thomas, and I appreciate that. So my final thoughts on this, there's so many people that told me I was going to love this series, and I think it was quite obvious. When I was into the first 100 pages of Priest of Bones, I was like, this is going to be my jam. And this has been just what I've been kind of looking for, that Grimdark itch I've been looking for since I finished The Last War, and since I haven't had any new First Law in a while. This was really it. It really hits that sweet spot between ground level nobility. Again, I feel like it's a perfect marriage of the two, so I feel like you're really getting best of both worlds there, and some of the best political intrigue I've read in Grimdark, and I've read some good ones, so I feel like it always kept me guessing. It had the guys that you love to hate and hate to love and all that, so it had a lot of the maneuvering that I really appreciate when you're getting into a political story like this. But Thomas's voice is just something I'm just not going to forget for a while. I mean, just the idea of this guy being in this guy's head is it's something I haven't really experienced very much in fantasy. And I just think it's been so incredibly well done. Like I said, my comparison is more like Hadrian in Sun Eater. Now, McLean's his prose, he's a good writer, but he's not as good as Christopher, I don't think, as far as like the written word, the prose. But I feel like, it is very much in that regard of like, I feel like I know this character now. And I think that's a really, really good thing. So my only real complaint is that I wish it had been 5 books. Because like I said, I feel like book 4, there was 2 very clear storylines. I wish book 4 had been that first storyline and book 5 had been that last storyline. And we'd have kind of slow rolled it there for a bit. But again, I'm just anxious to see what McLean does next. I know he does have another series that he did before this one. I haven't heard a lot of feedback on that. But I am very, very anxious to see what he does next because, yeah, at this point, he's got my money. I will pick up whatever he makes next. No questions asked. But guys, while I say this isn't a series for everyone, I think if you are into these things I've talked about, you're going to love it. If you like the First Law, if you want something kind of like Broken Empire, but not quite sadist, I think you might be happy. Something like the Red Rising sequels, and again, The Last War is probably the closest comparison I can come to for this. I think you're going to be quite happy. So you're good with the aftermath of the battle. What happens when our heroes come home, and how do they readjust to life when things have completely changed or been away? This will be right up your alley. So guys, have you read The War for the Rose Throne? Do you want to? Drop in the comments, guys. Let me know what you think. I'd love to know some feedback on this. And I want to thank you again for recommending this series to me. You guys were right, and I look forward to trying to find my next great Grimdark series. So drop in the comments, guys. Let me know what you think, and I will talk to you there.